Welcome to the Sandy and Toddcast, a podcast about all things strange, unusual, and a little bit odd. Why? Because that's how we roll. What are we talking about this time? Check it out. I can't believe that we are on episode 5 already. Hi, Toddcast.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Sesame Street.
You didn't finish it.
Because I don't have the talent to finish it like you do.
Oh, well.
I can do the 5, and that's about it.
I don't have talent either, believe me. You don't want to hear me sing. That's not that kind of podcast. So today, we're going to do part 2 of our Do Ghosts Exist? We Have Evidence podcast. And we're also going to talk to the woman, the myth, the legend, my mother.
Hey, I got to give her a round of applause.
Hi, Mom. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. Thank you.
And she's going to be hilarious, I can tell already. And a couple of weeks ago, we did Twisted Towns, Utica, New York, my hometown. And
yeah.
I was surprised to find out that I am related to a mobster who, by the way, I think is still alive. He's 95 now, Turk Zogby. Yes. And my mother chimed in with a few. She had texted me with a few stories of her own, so we thought we'd get her on here today. So Mom's on today to talk a little bit about being a part of mafia life.
It was wonderful. I loved it.
I have so many questions to ask about mafia life. I can't wait to get into it.
Well, here we go. So, Mom, you grew up. You graduated from high school in Utica in the 60s.
Yes, I did.
So I was born in 71. And so you were essentially in the middle of the mafia heyday in Utica.
Absolutely, but we didn't call it the mafia. We knew who they were, and they knew where they were, but we didn't call them anything.
So
were they called family members with quotation marks around them?
Yes, absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about what you remember from those days. Was there a lot of gangster activity going on?
Yes, but surprisingly enough, it was kept kind of hush-hush. Unless you were actually in the family, you didn't know about it. And, but in the same respect, a lot of the members were in the police department, so.
We talked about that because you had texted with me and you told me, and I said, can I say names? And you said yes.
Absolutely.
So.
Are you lucky? Like, has anybody come knocking at your door and like, Mom, we've got to talk to you about some information you passed along in a podcast?
No, I'm incognito right now.
So give us some stories. What were some of the things that went on? How did you know Turk and how well did you know Turk?
Well, it started when I was a young teen, and we would all wait on the busy corner in Utica for our bus home from school. And I would be talking to guys, of course. And my cousin Paul, who was a Utica police officer, used to pull up with the lights on, drag me off the busy corner, and put me on a bus because I wasn't able to talk to anybody. He was very protective. So I started standing on a different corner. And he showed up. I mean, there were eyes everywhere. Did you ever feel like weirded out by it at all, or was it just so natural to you because you grew up in it that it didn't bother you? It was just natural to me. A lot of them were family members, and the ones that I wasn't actually related to were family members. So it's something I just grew up with.
What kind of things were going on in Utica at the time? Was it a lot? Did you know about murders and stuff? People getting beat up?
Yes. Well, there was a lot of people that opened their mouth big once and then didn't do it a second time because they knew better. I don't really know about any murders, but there was a lot of shady stuff going on in a lot of places. And like I say, we all knew, well, the ones in my circle knew who it was and where it was going on, but we just didn't talk about it.
So when I think of the mob, like the movie that comes to mind is Marilyn Monroe, Some Like It Hot. And you know which movie I'm talking about, right?
Absolutely. I love it. With spats.
So the mob is trying to find the two of them because they saw the Valentine's Day murder, I'm guessing is what it was. And, they're running around trying to stay away from the mob. So they go to Florida, join an all-women's band, and have to be What were their names? What were the names that they came up with?
Geraldine and
Daphne.
Daphne and Geraldine, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So blah 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 blah. But one of my favorite scenes is where the mob, comes to the resort that they're at to have a meeting, and I put quotation marks around that, a family meeting. And of course, they're under the table hiding, and somebody pulls out a machine gun, and a bunch of them are dead. I mean, was there that? I know that's kind of a silly look at it, but was there that kind of feeling going on at the time?
Well, there was that kind of feeling, but yet it never came to fruition. Most times, the ones that we had around, the family members and things, just a word or a look in a certain way kind of took care of a problem.
So by family,
did that ever work? Did that ever work with your daughter at all?
Yeah, no, but I'll tell you what happened. I wanted to, when I was 15 or 16, I wanted to date this guy named Johnny Morocco, and he was.
Oh my God!
Yes, and he was a would-be trying to come up gangster. And my cousin Paul found out and talked to him, and I never heard from him again. But he was around. He was around. I'd see him, but he'd cross the street.
So let me ask you this. When you talk about the family, do you mean by blood or do you mean the mafia family?
Both, because they were both.
So, I mean, with the name Johnny Morocco, number one, you have to be in the mob. and number two, when you said that your cousin that Paul talked to him, I thought, did he really talk to him, or is it something else? But then you said that you actually did see him around town.
Yes, I did see him around.
Or was he, talking to the fishes?
I'd actually see him running away from me.
So let's talk.
I talked to your boyfriend Rocky the other day. He won't be bothering you anymore.
He's not as good a boy as you deserve there.
That's right.
So let's talk about Turk, though. How did you know Turk? How well did you know Turk?
I knew him fairly well. I knew him personally and everything, but it was always at kind of a distance because he always had people do his things for him. Even if he wanted to send me a message, it would be through someone. But all I would have to do...
sounds so weird to me. It's like a movie.
Let me tell you, there was this man, an older Italian man, and we called him Unc. That was his short for uncle. And he was in his 70s back then. But he was the typical, with the flashy shoes and everything. And at the time, the hot place to go was DeCastro's at Sylvan Beach, New York. And it was a big nightclub. And we would get to DeCastro's, and he would already be in there. And there would be this big, long table set up with chairs. And all I had to do was say, "We're with Unc." We'd get right in. That was it. We'd get right in as long as we were with Unc. And we were perfectly safe.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, did you feel safe?
Oh, absolutely.
You never felt like you personally were in
No, because I knew everybody knew better than to do anything to me.
Did you ever worry about the other, because there were a lot of different families at that time. We talked about a few of them. Did you ever worry about other families?
No, I never did. I was always relaxed about it and everything because I kind of grew up with it. So I really didn't have the main worry was my cousin Paul keep putting me on the bus.
Did he ever put you on the wrong bus, Mom?
There was only one going to where I lived.
Hey, we're going to take you downtown, honey. But I mean, your story about going to, was it DeCastro's, you said?
DeCastro's, yes.
I mean, that is typical mob story right there. We're with Unc, and then they get seated at this big long table.
And you would see it. You would see them all with their patent leather shoes on, the men, and the, dress pants, and the shirts only buttoned halfway up. And this was my life. This is, and all those girls with their hair teased up to the ceiling and tons of makeup and...
It just seems kind of funny because you think that the movie depiction of mobsters in that time in history is, a little bit over the top, a little caricature-ish, if you will. And then you hear stories from an actual family member of the mob, and you find out it really was like pinstripe suits and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Did you ever date one?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting.
His name was Bobby. Yes, I did date him. And it was really,
I wonder what Bobby's
really cool.
doing. Let's. I'm going to look up Bobby's number here and get him on the line.
I wish we could
get
Bobby on the line. That would be great.
And there was Bill. Yeah, we were all. You kind of dated without being boyfriend and girlfriend because we all just hung out together at different times.
Right.
And it was like group dating.
Huh. Interesting.
That, in this day and age, that could be fun too. So.
Oh boy. So have you you said that my brother actually did Turk's roof a while back.
Yes.
Redid his roof. Do you know where he lives now?
No, I don't. I
can't believe he's 95. He's still kicking though. Did he get out? I mean, he went in and out of jail.
Oh, absolutely.
Several times. I thought he was implicated in a murder.
Oh, he was. Several.
She says, "Oh, he was."
But
he
see,
was.
It was just Turk, and we all accepted it.
That's something. I'm
I don't think
fascinated.
I don't think I've ever thought about growing up in a family where like, yeah, he may have murdered several people, but you know what? We're going to invite him to Christmas dinner anyway.
Well, that's what she said to me. She goes, but he was really a nice guy. I'm like, what?
No, he was.
To who?
He was. If he thought a family was hungry or something or anything like that, he'd take care of them, and not necessarily somebody that was in with us.
Right.
Did you know any of the ones that we talked about? You haven't listened to that episode. That was a great episode. You haven't listened to it yet, but any of the ones that I talked about, like Crazy Al Marone. Did you know Al Marone?
Oh my goodness, that name sounds very familiar.
Oh boy, he got killed. He got murdered. He had dinner with.
She probably knows who did it and can't say anything about it.
I know, he's in witness protection.
Repercussion, exactly.
No, he was at dinner with Louis Brindisi.
Yes.
And
at
Brindisi's
DeCastro's
wife.
on a night in front of a long table. And
With
he
Unc.
came in and said, I'm with Unc. Exactly.
And then they parted ways, and
Yes.
Al was taking his girlfriend home.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when it went down, and he tried to shield his girlfriend and ended up taking the hit. But obviously it was for him anyways. There were a lot of names back then. Do you know anything about the Don Grillo murders? Were you...
I know of them. I heard of them. I wasn't privy to anything really, to do with them.
Right.
But they all basically came from the same group. Anything that went on, it was a very dominant group, the group I was in.
The group I was in, the gang I was in.
And they were in, but we didn't consider it. We considered it our group. And that's the way it was. And we had certain places we go. On certain nights, we go to Dante's Inferno on Oneida Square. And there was a bar. And we always had the one end of the bar, and it was all of our group. And then a few nights later, there'd be another place. So it was just...
Well, I guess when you're in the middle of it, you don't look at it from that perspective that Todd and I are looking at it from, where it's like, oh my God. And I when I found all this out, the more research I did about it, the more I realized, as I was in the 70s growing up, there was craziness going on everywhere around me, and I'm a little kid. I don't know the difference. And then, by the 90s, when there was a big federal case that took most of them down because basically they couldn't keep their mouths shut, and that was their eventual downfall. But up until then, it was pretty crazy in Utica.
It absolutely was.
Huh. Very interesting.
Very cool. And occasionally during this podcast, we might be talking about something else, and I may have a question regarding that, so I'll just pop in with it.
It may come to him from nowhere.
Because it's like I said, it's fascinating, and now to hear kind of like a firsthand tale of it, it's not that far off from Hollywood's version of what mobster life was like.
Now, I believe it was the Falcone brothers who ran. She's nodding her head. She's nodding her head. And, well, it was funny. The Inceras. There's a lot of names around today who had relatives who were involved in the mob. There's a ton of them, and I grew up with a lot of these names. But
so I have a question brothers, now. Like I do have a question, and I think my question is this: is it truly gone, or is there still? Do you feel like there's still some connections there that are still made today because of the past and family connections from that time period?
Yes, I absolutely do, because it's not so much the older adults now, because they've kind of faded away a little bit, but their children who are adults now, who aren't really actively in these things, still were raised with it. And so it still does go on, but not to the extent that it did when I was young.
Yeah, I would think that it would
nobody's
calm
pulling
down.
nobody's pulling up on the street, dragging a girl in and taking her on the bus or anything like that.
Taking her on the bus.
When
Yeah.
you grew up in this family, it became part of your heritage. So you accepted it.
Right.
Interesting.
Right. Very cool.
One thing that we discovered was that I can't remember which of the Falcones. One of the Falcones, the older Falcone, moved to Miami in the 60s, but he still had a lot of dealings up here, and his brother ran the family up here.
Yeah.
And he lived on Mohawk Street. Did you know that? He actually lived on Mohawk Street about 5 houses from where my father lives now.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I
Yes.
thought that was pretty
Yes.
interesting. I
In
thought that was
fact,
interesting.
the house that your father lives in now was a guy I dated in high school, an Italian guy, who turned out to be a policeman because he wanted to do something about things that were going
Oh,
on.
that's interesting.
That's why you didn't end up with him, right?
Absolutely. Well, I trapped him quick.
All right, so thanks to my mom for coming on and filling us in. It kind of rounded out the whole, our whole thought process on
Yeah.
the mafia in Utica. We had unanswered questions, and so it's good to have you come on and kind of answer questions from the viewpoint of someone who was right in the middle of it.
Yeah, now I have to go in witness protection.
The 5 listeners of our podcast I don't think are part of the mob, so I think you're okay, actually.
I think you're safe. There's somebody in Iowa, and it's like, my sister. So
Right,
I think we're
right.
good. But so thanks, Mom. Mom, you want to hang out with us for a while? We're
I'd
talking
love
about ghost evidence.
If you're enjoying this episode of the Sandy and Toddcast, there's more where that came from. Follow Sandy and Todd on Facebook. Just look for the Sandy and Toddcast, or you can subscribe to their YouTube channel and check out the video version each week there. Find these guys on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. Soon you'll be able to support the Sandy and Toddcast on Patreon and be able to follow them on Instagram. As always, thanks for joining in the fun, and stay weird.
Last week, we told a whole bunch of personal stories and played a couple of EVPs that I had gotten in Gettysburg years ago. And we're going to continue it because it's been going on for so long, because there was so much of it that we really wanted to continue on with it. So you're going to hang out with us?
Absolutely. I'd love
All right.
to.
One of the things I kind of wanted to talk about this week is I feel like over the last, say, year of my life, maybe 2 years, I've really kind of grown in my thinking and my thought process on ghosts and hauntings and all that kind of stuff, and it's really changed. Mm-hmm. The typical, is this house haunted, or is this person possessed? I mean, I think that's a very, very simple and narrow way of looking at it.
Yeah.
But it seems like in the last several weeks, since we've started doing the podcast, I've seen a lot more information, investigations, TV shows, documentaries that really has opened my mind to the use of the term energy. Mm-hmm. And how, I've always been a believer, at least for a pretty long time, that, when we go in and we investigate a place and we get something happen, something moves, or we see an apparition, or we get audio or something like that, I've stopped saying it's a ghost. And I've really just started using like this happened because of the energy there.
Yeah.
But I really, I really feel like our personal human energy, along with nature, along with everything that's happened in the past, really comes together and creates all these things happening. So if you take one of those elements out, if you take the human energy out, you take out the natural energy of the earth, of nature, if you take out the experiences, if the mob never was in Utica, for instance, where would your mom be today? Where would you be today? Mm-hmm. Everything that's happened in the past has shaped who we are. So why doesn't it shape the experiences we have now with paranormal stuff?
Well, I totally agree with you. And as I got older, I think experience, maturity sort of gives you a different look at things, a different perspective at things. The more that I experience, the more my mindset starts to change about what a ghost is. When we talk all the time, I use the term energy more than I use the term ghost.
Right.
I'm big on energy. I think that we give off energy. My mother and I sitting next to each other here, we're giving off our own personal energy. Would we have an experience somewhere that maybe if it was just me alone or my mother alone, would we still have that experience? I use the term perfect storm a lot too, because I think that sometimes, really, really quick example, but years and years ago, I was home from college visiting my family on the weekend, and my sister Heather and I got a Ouija board out, and we were playing. And I know, well, believe me, I don't use Ouija boards anymore. I have not used a Ouija board in, 40 years. I'm not using one ever again.
Well, that's funny because I actually have one with us here today. We're going to do it right now.
No, we're not. Get over here.
Just kidding.
But we were playing around with it, and it would move for us, and it would answer questions. But the minute somebody else tried to do it, it wouldn't work. And I think that's a good example of energies coming together. Who's to say that if I was in an investigation with you, that we would have the same experience if I was in an investigation with someone else?
I don't think we could. I don't think we would. I really don't. I saw another episode of a TV show last night that I have some respect for, and there's a member of this team, and they've been around a long time. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter where he goes or what he does, stuff happens.
Right.
And I think his energy just automatically allows the other energy to come through and easily communicate and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So
why is it that I can walk into a place and I can have boom, 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 boom things happening, whereas somebody else, because I'm not crazy, don't swirl the finger, but my mother or you can walk into a place and nothing will happen.
Yeah.
I walk into all kinds of places and immediately things happen, and I've never understood that. And the older I get and the more that I experience, the more activity seems to be attracted to me.
So let me ask you this, because they say that special abilities and things like that run in the family. I want to ask your mom,
I've asked her this question. Go ahead.
Have you? So I'm going to put her on the spot on the podcast and just say, okay, so I've gotten to know Sandy in the last year, and yes, she is crazy, but she's a lovely woman.
Whatever.
And so my question to you is, did you ever have stuff going on in your life? Did you experience anything growing up or even now?
Not growing up or anything, no. The only thing I experience now, and Sandy can verify this, I had this little dog that I loved dearly, and he passed away 4 years ago, and he was 16 years old. And he used to have a certain path he would take through my apartment to get to his little bed. And very often, and we've consulted your friend there who...
the animal communicator, yeah. Lisa, that I'd like to get on.
And she says, yes, she has spoken to him, because I will be sitting in my chair and I'll look down and he'll cross right in front of me and take the same path that he used to take over to his bed. And from time to time I can hear him bark. He had a distinctive bark. I guess I'm more in tune to animals than humans. But,
and you know what? Congratulations, because humans suck overall.
Yes,
so if you can connect with the animal world, more power to you.
Absolutely.
Well, I will say this though, that I believe my grandmother was an empath, and I do believe that my grandmother had some abilities. My grandmother on my mother's side, because she would have dreams sometimes that would actually come true. Mm-hmm. And now that I look back on her as an adult at my age, who was almost the same age as her when she passed, another 16 years, there are things that she would say or do, or the way that she would be, that would lead me to think that she was empathic. She wasn't a very social person. She was very introverted when it came to staying away from people. She didn't want, even her own family. She stayed away from her own family. She was very... not antisocial, but wasn't a very social person. Didn't go out, didn't go spend hours, as it was in the time. In the 70s and 80s, people, especially family, would spend a lot of time together. They would go to each other's house. They would do things. My grandfather used to play cards with my aunts and uncles. She would never go. And it wasn't, I think, she always used to say, well, I don't know, yeah. But I think a lot of it was that she just didn't, I think she picked up on energies. I think she was empathic. And I don't even think she realized she was empathic because that was not something that people understood at that time. Not like we do today. So
and she was very satisfied in the world she lived in. She was comfortable with it. She didn't feel she had to reach out to get anything else. She was very comfortable where she was.
So
and I think a lot of that generation kind of was like that in that they put in the hard work. They did what they had to do to get through life. And sometimes things were great and they had a lot of money and they had a lot of wealth. And sometimes they worked, as long as they needed to work every day to get stuff done. And it was just it was a generational thing, I think. And
Agreed.
And you bring that up, and I think I think about my dad now who has dementia issues, and I think about growing up with him. And my dad, I don't know this. This is just like a theory or a thought process I have on it, but I feel like my dad was always feeling and understanding and thinking about things that he never vocalized. I could look at my dad and he could look out the window and spot any animal that was a mile away that nobody else could see, but he certainly could really see that animal. But I really think sometimes he was looking out and seeing things that he couldn't explain.
Yeah.
And never did.
Yeah. I think that's very possible. It's very possible. One thing I do wish is that I had been able to, as almost 50-year-old me now, been able to discuss these things with my grandmother when she was still here to get her take on it. I wish I had that knowledge that I have now at my age to be able to discuss that with her because, when you have this kind of ability, it's not easy at all. I'm always in awe of people who are younger, who seem to be okay with it, who seem to understand it, who have grasped it, who know what's going on with them, because I never did. And it would have been really great to understand at a young age what was happening.
Well, and again, that's generational.
Yeah.
They didn't talk about things.
No.
They didn't talk about feelings. They didn't, my parents were, my dad is 90. My mom was 76 when she passed away, whatever it was. They, to say I love you, that was a big deal until we got older, parents, you just didn't share certain things. You lived your life. You went out, you milked the cows every day, you plowed the fields, you came home, you ate dinner, you got up in the morning. Life was very different. And so in so many ways, I think younger generations have it easier because of the people who've gone through it and suffered through it and are now willing to open up and share their knowledge and story about it.
Yeah, you're right.
So at some point, you're going to come across someone who's younger than you, and you're going to be okay with, hey, you're not crazy.
Right.
Hey, this is probably an ability. Hey, don't be afraid of it, but here's what you need to do.
Yeah, this is what I know.
We didn't have that kind of stuff. Even think about growing up. How often did people admit to believing in ghosts?
Right.
Or energies or hauntings or any of that? Nobody did. It wasn't the thing.
Because
no ghosts.
Because we're taught that they don't exist from an early age. Do you remember, Mom, when we went to see, was it David Considine or was it John Zaffis? I think it was John Zaffis. And you were telling him after the presentation about Caitlin seeing Grandpa when she was little. And my sister Caitlin had never met my grandfather.
No.
And she would see him in the corner. And
she would go in the corner and speak to him.
She would speak to him. And people tell children at a young age, not you specifically, but people would tell them.
Sure.
That
there's nobody there.
There's nobody there. That's an imaginary friend that you have. How many imaginary friends were actually people who had passed on?
You know what? I never had an imaginary friend.
I never did.
But then again, I had no friends growing up.
I believe it. Anyways, So
I would give you a hand gesture, but your mother is in front of us.
Go for it. Go ahead.
There's a lady in our presence right now.
Dear Lord,
There's a lady.
you should see the things he does to me. The things he says to me during this podcast. Anyways, so let's talk about some evidence then, shall we?
Okay. All right. So what are we going to go with? More evidence this week? What are we looking at this time?
Well, we talked about the Cashtown EVPs last week, which kind of blew you away. And this week I want to talk about two different places. One I can't really discuss in depth because the episode for my Ghost Pubs and Grub isn't out yet, but eventually I'll be able to talk about it a little more. But I wanted to take this EVP that I got. We had mad, crazy activity there that night. Can't wait to tell everybody about it. But this one was interesting because we've talked previously about how spirits are drawn to certain people. And I believe that they're drawn and can tell when people have abilities because it makes it easier for them to communicate if they're communicating with someone who has the ability to see, hear, feel them. You know, that makes them excited, I guess you could say.
Right.
Because they spend most of their time trying to be acknowledged. You know, that's why you see, you know, things falling off shelves or, you know, a lot of times with intelligent hauntings, they just want to be acknowledged.
Right.
So this was in the establishment that we were in. It was a restaurant. And we had eaten in a little room off to the side. We had dinner, all of us, the whole team. And I felt heavy energy in this room while we were eating. And I knew there was something going on there. And I found out later that things had happened in there. But I was asked, when we started the investigation, I was asked, where do you think we should start? And I said, why don't we start in the room where we ate?
Right.
And you can hear a pretty clear response after I say that. Let's play it, and then we can talk about it a little bit more.
All right, here it comes.
Here in the corner where we ate.
Yeah.
One more time?
Yep. Here in the corner where we ate.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So what it says is she's coming.
Right.
They knew I was there. They were aware of the fact that I could feel them. They were aware of the fact that I could communicate with them. And they were saying, she's coming. They were waiting for me to come in that room. And more stuff happened to me in that room that I can talk about at a later date. But
So here's my thought process on it. They're like sitting around going, oh my God, this one is a crazy one. Look at her. And then they're like, oh God, here she comes.
Here she comes. I don't think it was that kind of an attitude.
Oh, I'm
but
sure
thanks.
it was. They're speaking to me now.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's what they were thinking.
But I thought it was interesting that they probably had known that I was in there earlier while we were eating, and they probably picked up on it. And I've always had them attracted to me anyway, so I just thought that was very interesting that they intelligently said, she's coming, after I was asked where we should go, and I answered.
That's interesting. I'll be looking forward to that episode coming out.
That's going to be really good, and I can't wait. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that won't make it on the episode that was crazy, and I'll be able to go into more details about it.
That's
down the road.
That's always the way it happens with those shows. There's so much stuff that you just can't translate.
So much stuff happened, like boom, 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 and it's sort of, that's why I want to talk to the owner too, because I want to be able to tell him, look, this is what's going on in your establishment. This is where this is happening. This is why this is happening. I figured a lot of stuff out during that investigation for them. So I just can't talk about it yet, but it's going to be really good. It's hard to fit all of that into, 25 minutes.
Right. Let's talk about real briefly what a spirit box is. It's basically a radio that very quickly scans all the stations up the dial.
Right.
And it's the thought process behind it is that energies can use it and manipulate it to be able to speak through it and say things in response to questions that are being asked. There's a lot of, I mean, you and I both work in radio, so we understand how radios work.
I walk the line on a spirit box. I always have.
I mean, I think if it's something where it's obvious that it was an answer,
right.
Great. If it's just something out in the middle of nowhere, it could be communication. It could be nothing. And so while it could be communication, I kind of have to go,
I've had a lot of, I've just started to recently use a spirit box. I purchased one about a year ago, but I didn't really use it until the last maybe 5 or 6 months. And I walk the line because, number one, the only experience until now I'd ever had with a spirit box was watching it on TV. And I'm sorry, but a lot of times I feel like when they ask questions and they get an answer, they sort of take whatever the response is, or so-called response, and they sort of turn it into what they want it to be. I've seen that a lot. And I don't, for me, unless it's clear-cut, a clear-cut, intelligent response that makes sense to what if you say how many people are in the room and it says car, why would you say, oh, well, were the people in the car? It makes no sense to me. And so I've always kind of walked the line there. We have used it, and I'm going to play a few of them for you guys now. We were at the Rucker Mansion, number 3 in Utica back in September for Ghost Pubs and Grub. I'm going to give it a shameless plug right here. You can go on our Facebook page, Ghost Pubs and Grub, Ghost Pubs and Grub, and you can check out the episode too. It was fascinating. The mansion was owned by Roscoe Conkling, who was a huge politician, did a lot statewide, did a lot for the United States. He was very well known. He was also a jerk, and he was a ladies' man. And it's a huge, gorgeous mansion that the Landmark Society of Utica is in the process of, and has been for several years. They bought it about 12 years ago, and they're in the process of restoring it. So there are sections of it that are not so safe. But this night that we had this investigation, we were given full and complete access to the mansion, which was unbelievable. Now, I had been in there a couple of times before. Previously, I had been in there. It's from the 1830s, I think, something like that. And I had been in there the year before and got an amazing shadow figure picture. I was there for a dinner party, and we were only allowed to go on the first and second floor, but I got something, and I'm going to post it up on our Facebook page, the Sandy and Todd cast, so everybody can see it. So I had some experience there, and I knew there was a lot of activity. I could sense like this real heaviness. And we decided to use the spirit box in Roscoe Conkling's bedroom. There were a lot of pieces in there that were not necessarily belonging to Roscoe Conkling and his wife, but in which he didn't spend a lot of time there himself. He actually spent a lot of time living off the property, but would come back and visit, believe it or not. But there were a lot of period pieces there. And we were all sitting on the bed, and we could all, I could feel, I was there with one of the other members of my team, a female, and we could feel the cold air like right on us. So we could feel that there was something there. So we took out the spirit box and we started asking some questions. And the first one, I saved some of the really intelligent answers. The first one is when we asked how many people were in the room, meaning how many spirits are in the room with us right now.
Okay, here it comes.
How many people are in this room tonight? Three. There were 3.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah,
straight out.
It was, and you know, sometimes you have to give it a few seconds because there's other things that are going to come through, but sounds that are going to come through. But that was a pretty clear 3. So we treated it as 3 people were in the room with us. Now, at one point, I asked if they lived in the house, in the mansion, or if they were just visiting.
Okay.
So that's the next one, number 7.
All right, here it comes.
Don't listen to Bill. Sit with us, girls.
Did you live here or were you visiting?
Sounds like you, Ryan.
You say correct?
Yeah. So we got a correct, which I thought was very interesting.
Let me hear that one again.
Mm-hmm.
Don't listen to Bill. Sit with us, girls.
Did you live here or were you visiting?
You know, that's an interesting one. Because the thing about a spirit box is it's going through these different stations.
Right. And
if you get a one-word answer, that could be basically a radio signal, and you get that one word.
Yeah.
Boom. Todd. Sandy. But that's
Exactly.
Sandy's 2 syllables. So that would be basically over 2 separate frequencies.
Right.
You got correct. So that's over 2 different frequencies. You can hear the frequency, the station change, and it came across both. So that, to me, is very, very cool.
That was really intriguing to us. There were quite a few of them. The last one I'm going to play is going to kind of blow your mind a little bit. But the next one was when Ryan was sitting there in the room with us, a member of our team, and someone said, can you go sit next to Ryan?
Okay.
What do you think about Ryan?
Quiet over here, am I?
He's very quiet.
Want to come talk to me?
I thought he said Ryan.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Did it just say Ryan?
Yeah, it said Ryan. And it was
I'm gonna
very
play-
clear.
I'm going to play it one more time.
Sure.
What do you think about Ryan?
Quiet over here, am I?
He's very quiet.
Want to come talk to me?
I thought he said Ryan.
Yeah, that's definitely there.
Again, another 2-syllable word.
Right.
So this to me was the pièce de résistance, and it was great because
Ooh, she knows how to say
I
other
said
languages.
it.
You were a good mom.
I took some French.
That's
So-
pretty good for the mob, to have some other.
Over the course of the Spirit Box session, we actually discovered that there was a 10-year-old boy in the room with us, and his name was Kevin. Another one that, because of time I didn't play it, but another one that gave us a 2-syllable name when we asked, what's your name? And Kevin came out. So we referred to this child, or so-called child, as Kevin. And at the end, Bill is talking about a rocking horse that was on the floor. And this one's kind of going to blow your mind.
See, first of all, don't keep rocking horses. That's because energies are stored. Their children's energies are stored in rocking horses because they spend so much time on it, but then they're actually creating energy rocking back and forth.
Exactly.
So there's energy transfer. Don't do that.
Exactly.
When the kid grows up, burn the damn thing.
Well,
That's
I didn't
what you
put
do.
it in there. All right.
All right. Here's where we go.
Hey, Kevin, we got a rocking horse over here. You think you can sit on top of this thing and ride it?
Yeah. I like his face. I like Todd's face when that played.
What? Okay, I'm going to play it one more
Go
time.
ahead.
Hey, Kevin, we got a rocking horse over here. You think you can sit on top of this thing and ride it?
Okay, what does that say?
It said, ride it? I think so.
And no, you heard it at that point when it happened.
We heard it. Without
Okay.
a doubt, we heard it. That's another thing that bothers me about Spirit Boxes. A lot of investigators consider Spirit Boxes as EVP, which I don't.
No, they're
I
not.
just have to mention that. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was very clear. It came through. Ride it? I think so.
It would have been interesting if at that point the thing started rocking back and
It
forth.
would have been amazing. And
Then you grab your stuff, you push your friends out of the way, and you run like hell.
I don't get afraid of these things. I run
I don't
towards
either,
them.
but
I run towards
you
them.
don't listen. I understand that, but you don't tell me that if that happened, you wouldn't go "Ah," a little bit.
I honestly would be fascinated. We were in a room that I had the year before when I was in there. When you get to the top of the stairs, there's a room immediately to the left, which was probably a bedroom. And I walked in and there was very heavy energy in there. And this Kevin seemed to be following us around. We could feel the energy. So many things happened to us in there. I don't think I've ever been on an investigation where crazy things didn't happen. And we were in the bedroom and Bill was over by a dresser. And all of a sudden, the dresser moved on him. And we all kind of jumped. right after that, now we've talked about this before, that takes a lot of energy, whether it was 10-year-old Kevin or it was someone else, which I feel like it was someone else. There was a lot of energy there. There was some older energy there. It wasn't very far from where I got the shadow figure picture of who I believe to be Roscoe Conkling. He was in period dress. We did the time, the typical flashlight session because we thought, let's give this a shot. So we turned the flashlight just enough that the flashlight could go on with a mere touch. And we started asking Kevin questions, and the flashlight would turn on and off to answer our questions. So that was, the second floor was extremely, extremely active. And
I know a lot of people are like, flashlight, smash light, blah, blah, blah. Again, it's a tool in your toolbox.
And you have to take the whole picture. You have to look at the whole picture.
And that has to be with any evidence you look at.
Right.
You have that one piece. What else do you have? What else shows that something in fact happened?
Right. Right. It's to me, it's using everything. It's using personal experiences. It's using someone like me who can feel energy. Can. Last week we talked about the bar where we were sitting, and I mentioned a specific name, and the name just came to me, and sure enough, the equipment just goes wild. So I obviously hit on the name, and I believe that's one of the spirits that is in that bar, is that name that I mentioned. So, it's just using tools together along with personal experiences to sort of validate and come to certain conclusions as you do it. So one more from the Rucker Mansion, because I thought this was really cool. This was in the beginning of the investigation. Oh, and I have a really quick story to tell about that, too. I won't even go into the basement. We'll have to talk about the basement another time. But we were just beginning the investigation, and we were just starting to go up the stairs to the second floor. And Dennis had noticed that our lead investigator had noticed that his battery had drained on his camera. He only had 10 minutes left within about 10 steps of starting the investigation. And this is where I caught an EVP. It's a little bit light. I may have to boost it. I'll edit it in for the podcast. But we get a get out. And this is literally 30 seconds or less into the investigation. Somebody didn't want us there.
Audio and it'll show a light on it, okay? Whoever's here.
Yep, I heard that immediately. Let's play it one more time.
Yeah.
Audio and it'll show a light on it, okay?
Now, these are EVPs, right?
Yes, that's an EVP. That's an EVP. I got a lot of really cool stuff. I got down in the basement, I'll just talk about it really quick. We got a lot of moans. Some that were audible.
When I haunt, just so you know, this is going to be how I haunt, okay? My dead word, by the way, is pumpernickel. So if you hear pumpernickel, then you know it's me, because that's pumpernickel. That's 4 syllables. If you hear that come across a spirit box, you know it's me.
Once you're gone, I'm going to investigate, and then I'll ask for the secret word.
Correct.
Okay.
And then the other thing I'm going to do a lot of is this. Because that's the way Scooby-Doo ghosts do it, and that's what I'm going to do.
Yes, I think you should.
So whenever you say we got to moan, that's what I think about. Oh!
Well, it was weird. It was really crazy because this is just a small amount. Like I said, you have to fit all of this stuff into 25 minutes. You just can't do it. And there's so many things that happened to us that night. But there's a thought that there could be someone buried in the basement, basically. Okay. So while we're down there, it was a horrible feeling down there. It was a completely different feeling for me from what it was on the first, second, and third floors. Very dark, very heavy. I'm not going to go and say evil, but I'm going to say it was extremely dark. And while we were down there, we got incredible hits. I'm going to put a video up as well on our Facebook page, the Sandy and Toddcast, of these EMF hits we were getting as we were hearing these moans, these female moans. They believe a woman is buried down there.
Okay.
And there was, on the property over the years, there were many hangings. That's where they would hang criminals and things on that property. So God only knows what actually is going on down there in that basement. But we would hear a lot of female moans. I mean, clearly audible moans that we picked up on audio as well. And right around that time, it got really, really cold. And people were saying that they felt something touching them. And we were getting EMF spikes of 78, of 64. I mean, you know,
that's big.
As an investigator, you know that an EMF of 3 is phenomenal. So to get hits like that, and I get so many hits like that, it's just incredible. To get that kind of EMF in a place where there was no EMF previously is just insanity. It's crazy. So be watching for that video because that's great.
Okay.
So while we were down there, we were walking towards the stairs to go upstairs. And I had the Mel meter in my hand, and we started getting spikes again. And I said, I think it's following us. And just as I looked down at the EMF detector and it spiked to like 64, right before that, I got an EVP of something in almost a mocking tone going, oh, 64, right before I said it. Like it was looking over my shoulder, and it was kind of mocking me.
Okay.
So we can do some more evidence down the road. I've got so much evidence from the Rucker Mansion. This place is crazy. There's such crazy activity here. And Rucker Mansion 1, which is next door, 2 was unfortunately demolished several years ago, but 1 used to be a retirement home, a nursing home. It had a lot of stuff. They get much more negative activity in Rucker Mansion 1. 3, the basement, though, for me was bad. So I just have to tell this quick story, too. We had a docent there who kind of, before we started, was from the Landmark Society, and he sort of gave everybody who'd never been there, part of the team, a little tour and talked about the house a little bit. When he left, because we're sort of downtown Utica where there are a lot of, there can be some unsavory characters walking by, we locked the door when he left. So there's the big old locks. There's a chain lock. I mean, it's these huge 1800s heavy wood door. We put the chain lock on. We clicked the padlock, everything, the whole 9 yards. And we went on with our investigation. So as we come up from the cellar, the basement, we're getting all, that's the end of the night, the end of the investigation. We're all pumped up because it's exciting and we had a great night of activity. And the door starts to open and in walks the man from before. And all of a sudden it dawned on us that the door was unlocked. That nobody had gone and unlocked the door. So while we were investigating at some point, whether it was upstairs in the basement, on the ground floor, while we were investigating, someone or something had unlocked the door from the inside. All 3 heavy locks had been unlocked because there was no other way that this man could have gotten in the house. Oh, wow. So that was pretty spooky. That one threw me off a little bit. You better believe I said our closing prayer in earnest that night because that one threw me off.
Yeah, did that one make you go a little bit?
A little bit. It did because
I thought you always run to those things. I thought you run in the direction of fear.
I do, but that one was so unexpected because that's not something you would expect, and we didn't. I guess you just that's not something that we figured could happen. We figure that something could move, that there could be noises, but something literally taking all of that strength to unlock 3 locks, heavy locks on a heavy door while we're wandering around the house, that kind of throws you off a little bit, I have to say.
Those are the times when you wish you had the resources and the people and the equipment to have audio running in every location in a place like that so that you could listen back and see if you ever heard the locks click open. And and video of the outside of that door to see if anybody did it. it always poses more questions than it gives you answers.
That's such a good point, because that is the incident that had me buy a camera with night vision. That is the incident that had me discussing it with our team, that we should be setting up separate cameras throughout the location. And so now going forward, we will have more than one camera. I mean, we have Lafayette, our camera operator, but we're going to have static cameras throughout the locations to see what else can, because so many things happen while we're in a different place that you really need multiple cameras to be able to catch it. Imagine if we caught that. Imagine if we had caught those locks unlocking on that door. That's phenomenal.
But that is the life of a paranormal investigator,
Sure.
because how often has something happened and you didn't catch it?
No.
Whether
you're
it's
right.
audio or audio and video or audio, video, and a temperature spike, to be able to really gather what you need, you almost need to be like Ghostbusters, where you've got this unending pool of money and all the science that you can put behind it to really do it right.
I will say that the more I investigate, the more I'm sort of training myself to think of things like that, because that's why my first thought is always bring your phone with you, because that is the quickest way to record something. And so that's how I got the video of the EMF spikes in the basement of the Rucker Mansion. I've done it with a few other investigations so that we can say, okay, here's the evidence to go along with what happened.
Right.
I did that in the Braylock Inn in Cazenovia. Very haunted. We stayed in haunted room number 12. People from central New York will know the Braylock. It's very well known. And we stayed there twice. And the first time, I had a millimeter with me, and I had something or someone lowering and raising the temperature of the room at my request. And I literally got it on video. I actually got two videos. One I lost because the computer crashed, but the other one I have, it's not as remarkable, but you can certainly see the ambient room temperature raising and lowering as I ask whatever or whoever this was to do it for me, and they did it for me. So
that's cool.
It's great to be able to think like that. You have to train yourself to think outside the box and be ready for things like that. So.
Well, what this is it's an ongoing learning process.
Mm-hmm.
You never know everything. Your philosophies change over time because of the experiences you have that you can't necessarily put an answer to, and you miss out on a lot of evidence, and that teaches you to be better at getting evidence.
Sure.
So it's a learning process, and it's probably one of the things that I like best about it is no two are the same. No two are the same. No investigations. I'm going to tell a quick story.
Okay.
And then I'm going to actually save my evidence for the next show.
Yay. Okay.
Okay. So, because I've got some evidence from after my mom passed away
This
that I want to share.
Amazing.
Okay. But I want to tell, and I don't think I've told this on the podcast, but this was a real revelation for me. The group that I was involved with the TV show Haunted State, we were investigating what was, I guess you would call it kind of a nightclub, a bar. I don't know if they serve food. They may have. I can't remember. But this building had been a lot of stuff. It had been a bank. It had been, and they kind of presented the place kind of in the mobster feel. See how that ties in. Mm-hmm. In that like 30s kind of feel of the decor and stuff like that. At any rate, we got stories at this place. There was always stuff going on. There was all these voices and things moved and this happened and that happened. And we went in and we investigated. And we just didn't get a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. We investigated really hard. We had a couple of things, maybe some K2 spikes. Maybe we got some talking. And then toward the end of the night, we were just drained. I mean, you know how you feel after an investigation.
Yes.
And especially if you are empath, you are on a different level of being drained after this.
Sure are.
And we had gotten to the point where we're just about to wrap up. And most of us had gone and sat at the bar because that's where investigators like to hang out.
We do.
Even though there were no drinks being served because it was after hours. But we were hanging out at the bar. And Michael Brown, who is the director and producer of the TV show, went off with the camera to another location. We had gotten a conversation that we had recorded on one of the camera's audio that was disembodied conversation right before this happened. And I was sitting there and I'm thinking, this you hear all these stories. It's very frustrating. And I don't know what happened, but I said to myself in my head, maybe we're trying to communicate with whatever energy is there using how we like to communicate. Mm-hmm. And maybe that energy doesn't have those abilities. And I likened it to, in my mind, speaking different languages. Some people speak with sign language. I couldn't tell you sign language. I might be able to pick out a couple of letters, but if somebody were saying a sentence to me, I could not communicate back using sign language. I certainly don't know much of any other foreign language. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if you're not speaking to me in English, you could call me some really nasty names and I would have no flipping clue.
And I may.
Yeah. Feelings mutual. At any rate, so I was sitting there thinking, well, we keep asking it to use the flashlights, use the spirit box, use the K2. We're asking it to do this, this, and this. I said out loud, not very loudly, but kind of out loud so that everybody else heard me. And I said, if you are here and we've tried to communicate with you all night and we didn't give you an opportunity to communicate back with us the way you know how to communicate, I want to give you one final shot to do it. And I said, on the count of 3, do whatever it is that you can do to let us know that we're here, that you're here. Whatever that is, make a knock, yell, scream, throw something, whatever it is.
Right.
And I said, on the count of 3, and I said, 1, 2, 3. And immediately something happened.
Wow.
And what happened was the door on the walk-in cooler, if you picture like a restaurant and they've got the freezer doors and there's always that big handle on the door that kind of pulls out its metal, right? That handle came out just far enough for it to slap back. And it happens to be one of the reports that they've always had is that something happens with that door and sounds are made and stuff like that. And it happened at that exact moment. It was just right over where Michael Brown was standing. I heard it. I had no idea what it was. He happened to be standing over where it happened. And he goes, oh, something just happened over here. And he didn't realize what I was saying because he wasn't paying attention to me. Uh-huh. And we put the audio and the video together, and it was pretty freaking incredible. And that was the first time I said to myself, we go into these places and we say, if you're here, turn on the flashlight. If you're here, say something. If you're here, do this. Right. It's like, you tell me how you want to communicate. You tell me how you want to discuss.
That's such a great example of thinking outside the box and not being cookie cutter and being open to different possibilities. What if I went into a place and said, if you don't do this, then, we
don't believe you.
We don't believe you're here.
Right.
I couldn't do that. I've had so many weird things happen to me that I know are communication, but they're all different. It's all different things. Not every spirit can move furniture. Not every spirit can yell. Not every spirit can do this or do that. But it's accepting that you can get communication in so many different ways. That's such a great example of that. That's perfect.
Well, and I'm sure it's like not new in the paranormal world, but it was new to me. And that's another reason why I just realized, like, when you talk energies, there may be other forms of communication that we as humans just don't have any clue about. And that's where, empaths and people who are psychic and all that kind of stuff, that's another level of communication that a lot of humans just don't understand or don't want to understand.
Right. That is a big part of it.
Yeah. So it's like being open and being willing to, even if you're skeptical, even if you don't want to put 100% belief behind some evidence or an event that happened, being able to just go, that's something that's interesting. I'm not saying you have to go, oh my God, there's ghosts. Oh my God, this place is haunted. But if you can't look at something and go, there's probably something there that isn't obvious to us. And trust me, That should happen in everyday life. You should walk outside and see the grass and go, geez, that is freaking amazing. I wonder how that whole process works, from the seeds to the growing to the individual blades. And I mean, we don't wonder enough about the world around us. We're just so stuck in what we do every day. Wake up, take a shit, brush your teeth, go to work, work your ass off. You get a check hopefully at the end of the week or end of the 2 weeks or whatever. You don't get paid enough. You go to the grocery store, you spend it all, you come home, your car's broke down. I mean, that's what we deal with on a daily basis as humans. We don't take enough time to look up in the sky and go, it looks like a little doggy up there,
Yep. I think we should end it there. That was great. Yeah. So
thank you very much. Woo! That's my participation for the week. We talked mobs and clouds in the sky.
we are a well-rounded podcast. Ain't that the truth?
I want to know if anybody's ever looked up in the sky and go, hey, that looks like a mobster. That'd be cool.
All right, so thank you to my mom for joining us. Yay, that was fun.
Thank you for
having me. Thank you to Toddcast. And next week we're going to continue with your evidence that has totally blown me away. And I think Dave's coming on next week to talk to us.
Okay, so just so you know, there's going to be a lot of questions about how that man puts up with you. Okay. I mean, I was easy on your mom. I was going to ask questions about your childhood and some of the most embarrassing things you ever did as a child.
Oh, embarrassing. How about the time she showed up in front of my school with her wedding dress on?
I like that. I might try that myself. I might show up in front of your house in a wedding dress. But I can't wait to talk to Dave. I've got so many questions for him.
All right. So as always, of course, a big special thanks to Dan Phillips for the use of his song 600 Miles in our intro and outro. I just love the song. I love Dan. You can find Dan on Facebook at Daniel Phillips Music and on Instagram at @D_Phillips Music. Thank you so much, Dan. As usual, you can like our Facebook page, The Sandy and Toddcast. We will be up on Patreon soon. We're working on that. And you can find us anywhere that you would normally find your podcast. Spotify. We are on Audible or Amazon.
And if you don't give a little money to us on Patreon, we know the mob. So just so you know, we can have your house pulled.
We're going to strong arm you into that, $2 a month.
Whatever it takes. I'm ready for it.
Thank you to everybody for supporting us, and we will talk to you next week. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
How many more miles left in this race? How long it takes, I don't know.